I wanted to announce a scientific study that suggests that in the coming years, most likely in July 2025, we could be facing a space weather catastrophe of the magnitude and severity of a once-in-100-year event like this. And even worse, we could experience an internet apocalypse. What do you mean, an internet apocalypse? Once in 100 years, not weather, but space weather. When I first heard these keywords, I was as surprised as you are. Now, to better understand the issue, let's put the future aside and focus on the past. 100 years ago, there were two disasters that affected the whole world, one of great importance and one of lesser importance. No one has heard of the more important one, the Spanish flu. Similar to today's coronavirus pandemic, it affected the whole world and caused millions of deaths. The relatively less important disaster that followed this pandemic, which lasted about 3 years, was a storm that lasted only 3 days. Yes, nearly 100 years ago, in May 1921, several fires broke out simultaneously in electrical and telegraph control rooms around the world, including in the United States and Britain. In Sweden, employees at the Karlstad exchange smelled a faint odor of smoke, first noticed that the electric vehicles were not working, and then saw that a fire had broken out, severely damaging their equipment. At the same time, in New York, another fire broke out in an exchange at Brewster Station and quickly destroyed the entire building. Similar reports of problems with the then fledgling electricity and telegraph wires began to appear in various parts of the world, including India, Britain, and New Zealand. It is said that just before this event, the Aurora Borealis was seen in the skies over New York. People who saw it even thought that Zeppelins from Europe were bombing Manhattan. Yes, you heard that right. There was an Aurora Borealis sighting in New York. As you know, this is a natural phenomenon normally seen in the northern regions, very close to the poles. When charged particles from the sun enter the Earth's magnetic field, such radiation is created. These particles are carried by the solar winds. Yes, the solar winds. Anyway, the word borealis in this aurora means wind. As I said, this is a natural phenomenon, and the Earth's atmosphere and magnetism act as a protective shield against solar activity. What do you mean by solar activity? You know, there are spots on the sun, and after these spots, there are solar eruptions, and much more effective coronal mass ejection eruptions. In other words, the sun ejects huge masses of plasma all over space. So what is plasma? It's the fourth state of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. This plasma is constantly being ejected from the sun in all directions, and sometimes it hits the side of the Earth. Sometimes the solar activity increases, sometimes it decreases. When it increases the most, scientists call it solar maximum. Every 11 years or so, the sun's activity reaches this maximum, and it has been recorded one by one since the 1700s. 24 solar cycles have been recorded in this way so far. We have all the activity data of the 18th century, the 19th century, the 20th century. Like the pendulum of a clock, these activities continue regularly. But as you can see, in addition to these 11-year cycles, there are also longer cycles of 88 years. It is in these cycles that very violent solar storms occur. I have just told you about a storm in the last century that lasted for 3 days. The century before that, in 1859, there was the most powerful solar storm ever recorded. It's called the Carrington event, and when that event occurred, auroras were seen in Sweden, New York, even in areas very close to the equator like Cuba, let alone the poles. So there have been 2 very large solar storms in the last 88 years of recorded history. But these 2 periods have a very important difference from today: lack of technology. At that time, infrastructures such as electricity and telegraph were just beginning to be built and were not that important in people's lives. These were damaged by storms, but never to the point of paralyzing people's lives. In the last 30 years, when modern technology and the internet became widely used, we have seen cycles where solar activity has always been low and weak. In other words, modern technology has never encountered a strong solar storm. We are now in the 25th solar cycle, and scientists are now predicting that the sun's activity will start to strengthen again, and this new cycle will reach its solar maximum in July 2025. Of course, solar storms, like natural disasters like earthquakes, are unpredictable natural events. But in certain periods, that's why I gave the example of the pendulum of the clock. The probability of their occurrence becomes very high. So what happens if a solar storm hits us in these days of modern technology? Nobody knows exactly. When there is a normal storm, at most we have localized power outages, right? When there is a strong solar storm, we can have power outages not regionally, not nationally, but all over the world at the same time. But what happens in the case of a global and very prolonged internet outage? Nobody really knows, because in the short history of the internet, we've never faced such an outage. We haven't, but there are some predictions and even calculation tools. For example, according to the NetBlocks website, which calculates the economic impact of an internet outage based on various data sources, the global cost of an internet outage lasting more than a week approaches $500 billion. Although it does not have a direct impact on human life, it is thought to threaten human life indirectly due to the disruption of various services that we connect to in almost every field. I told you that solar activity has been observed and recorded by scientists continuously for nearly 400 years. But the Earth has been recording this activity continuously, starting even earlier than we humans. In the trees and in the ice at the poles, changes in the atmosphere are written ring by ring. A new study has uncovered 3 major events in the last 10,000 years by looking at these rings. In 775 AD 5000, 259 AD, and 7176 AD, the Earth experienced major cosmic events. Of course, we don't know exactly what these are, but it is thought that they are most likely caused by solar storms. But not just any storms, not the big storms, not the big storms I just mentioned, mega storms that are 100 times more powerful than the biggest Carrington event that scientists have ever observed. So there are 10-year cycles, 100-year cycles, as well as much bigger cycles of 1,000 years, 10,000 years. And we can't even calculate, let alone predict, what will happen when these things happen. Not to mention the internet going down. Could it cause what is called a bit flip effect in electronic storage devices? Can zeros turn into ones and ones into zeros? Or can our hard drives be erased? Imagine if the digital memory of the whole world, let alone people, were wiped and lost in an instant. In short, our modern technology has not faced a powerful solar storm, nor has modern man faced a mega solar storm far more powerful than it. We are expecting the first one in the middle of the next 11-year cycle, when we reach solar maximum. And we also hope that it will not be one of those once in 1,000-year mega solar storms. And we predict all this by looking at this globe. This is a plasma sphere that we modeled in the light of the information we obtained by studying the sun. We invented electricity and electronics based on observations like this. Modern science and technology have always emerged in this way. But for some reason, no one listens to the voices of those who look at this sphere and foretell the future, just as no one heard those who, 100 years ago, analyzed and warned about the first of 2 disasters that affected the whole world, one very important and the other less important. That catastrophe completed its 100-year cycle and reappeared as the coronavirus. The 100-year cycle of the second catastrophe, which was less important at the time, even though it was only a similarity in name, namely the impact on the Earth of plasma ejected from the sun in coronal mass ejection, has also been completed. Let us already warn about the electronic anomalies that will occur when the next one comes, and let us be on guard against the solar storm opponents that are likely to form in those years. Among its many meanings, the orb is considered by some to be a symbol of the future. Expand our minds. Use your inner eye and brain to see the future. The sun means happiness, light. There is a sun here too, but it illuminates us with the light of knowledge.